I saw a video titled The Ultimate Guide to Autopilot released over the last couple of weeks, and what can I say? If you get to watch it, come back here and let's see how it's really done. I mean, I'm not normally bitchy about this type of thing, but at least read the full manual before pretending to know something. Alright, rant over. I'm not going to cover Windows Autopilot v2 as part of this. I'm going to cover just Windows Autopilot, the original. It's not and never has been called Windows Autopilot v1, but it did come first, and it is just called Windows Autopilot, and words matter, right? Now, I'm not going to do the usual boring, this is how you do Windows Autopilot, because there's lots of guides already on that, and they're all over the place, and varying levels of quality, I agree, but this is going to be more in-depth, and we're going to cover some of the options in actual detail, rather than just skipping over them, because we have no idea what they are. So, I'm also going to show you how you should be using Autopilot in the real world, not just testing it out, because that's also pretty much all you get to see on those videos online. First, in all these guides about Autopilot, you get told to capture the hardware hash and put that into the devices list. That's fine for testing, but that's really not how you should be using Autopilot in real life. But just for completeness, and to compete with those other videos that are showing you how to capture the hardware hash, let's go and look at that. Now, there are a couple of ways to collect the hardware hash, but I'm going to show you the easiest way that I usually use. And also, we're actually going to collect it from a machine that has not yet been built. But you could build the machine and then collect it, but you might as well just collect it from this screen here before you've even built the machine, and then you can simply reset it and it will go off and use Autopilot when you've assigned it to the correct profile. So let's just go to here and choose Shift F10. It opens up a command window running as administrator. So here we can now just grab, we're going to move from command prompt, which is where we currently are. We're going to type PowerShell. And from here we are in PowerShell. So now we can do something like set the execution policy to bypass, because we are going to need to run some scripts, then we're not going to be able to comply with the execution policy that's set by default on these devices. So the next thing we need to do is install script get-windowsautopilotinfo. That's all we need to do. We just press enter, and after a few seconds it will start installing that script, and it looks like it's installed it really quickly for me. That may be because I've already installed it previously on this device for some preparation I was doing. But in your case, when you install this script, it probably will ask you to confirm a few things, like it's okay to trust the repository it's coming from, for example. But now I can just do get-windowsautopilotinfo. And then if I just run that, then it will just do that, and that's got the autopilot info. But you can see it's not particularly useful because I've just got the hash printed on the screen and I can't really do anything with that. It ends in ... which is not going to be useful at all. So I can also do output file and then do C, where's my slash gone? There it is. AP.csv if you like, and there it is there. So it's now gathered that and put it into, let's have a look at C AP.csv, just open that, there it is there. So that's, I've got the device serial number, I've got the Windows product ID, which in this case is empty, and the rest is the hardware hash. Now, an interesting thing about the hardware hash is if we compare this thing here, which is the hardware hash, it's quite long, but let's actually make that smaller. If I take this hardware hash here and copy that, we're going to compare it to the second one that I just created. So if I do exactly the same thing, just get this and call this AP1. So it's exactly the same serial number, exactly the same device. Now the interesting thing about hashes is that they should always be exactly the same. So when you hash a value, you should hash it with the same algorithm and it will always be the same value. And yet when we look at this second file that I created and try and find that original hash, it isn't there, because this is actually a completely different value, and that's because the hash is actually made up of the serial number, the make and model of the device, and the date and time that this script was run. So it's always a different value, but it doesn't mean that it's different because when we extract that information from it, we will remove the date and time from the information, and so it will just be exactly the same device every time. So you can't just search to see if you've already captured this hash. It will be a different value, but it will actually have exactly the same information in it. Okay, so I've now got these two here. But with this, I would then need to copy that and put it onto a USB stick and take it over to my workstation, or I could maybe open up Internet Explorer somehow here and try and log into the portal, the Intune portal from here. An easier way to do it actually is if you can just grab this, and rather than doing output file, you can just do online. And with online, we're going to be able to connect directly to my Intune portal by just typing in my username and password, doing multi-factor authentication, and once we've approved this, so we need to read write Intune config, read write Intune devices, read write device properties, read write groups. Wow, there's a lot in this, isn't there? Read write group memberships and maintain access to the data you've given access to. Once we've approved all of that, we can choose accept, and it will then go ahead and should put that device into there we go. So it's putting that device into Intune for me, waiting for one of one to be imported. So we'll give that a few moments to finish it. I think it waits for about 5 or 6 lines of this for maybe about 15-20 seconds before it confirms that it is actually in there. And then when it is in there, we'll be able to go and take a look in the Intune portal and see that it's there. Give us a few seconds. In fact, I'll be able to head over to the Intune portal now, I think, and just show you. So first, copy to the tenant, and I'm going to go down to my Autopilot devices list. I already do have a few here. I've got 3 already. They're all assigned, so you'll see this new one that comes in a few seconds will... let's wait for it to confirm that it's been imported, and then we'll be able to see it. So we've got those 3 now, and we're waiting for the 4th one with serial number ending 5730205 to pop into that portal. There we go. It says one device imported successfully. Took around 97 seconds, and it's also run a sync for us, so all devices synced, which means that when I refresh this, we should see the 4th item right here, and it is, it's already assigned. So which one was that? 5732, I think it was. 573205. So we've already got a profile assigned. Let's see which profile that is, because I need to unassign it, actually. It is Autopilot Profile. It's a good name for it. And let me go in and very quickly remove this profile, because I do not want that to affect this testing that I'm doing. Okay, so review and save, and head back to my devices list. And when we push a new profile and assign that, that profile will change from the original profile that I've just removed to the new one that we're going to create shortly. Okay, so that works for testing Autopilot, sure. But testing Autopilot and using Autopilot are 2 completely different things. No matter how you plan to use Autopilot, you need a profile, though. So let's look at that next, before we go into the scenarios in much more detail. So let's just go in and create an Autopilot profile. So we already had one earlier on, but let's create a new one from scratch. So down here we've got profiles. And what I'm going to do is choose Create Profile, Windows PC, and I'm going to call it First Coffee AP Profile. Now, we have this description. You can put whatever you like in this description. It's free text. It isn't needed, but you can type it there if you like. Now, if you've got a couple of profiles, maybe that's needed. If you haven't and you've only got one, then maybe a description isn't needed at all. But you feel free to put whatever you like in this field. Next, we have this very interesting option. Convert all target devices to Autopilot. By default, it's set to no. If we choose yes, it goes a nice purple color, and we need to figure out what that does. And so for now, I'm going to choose no, because I want to talk about it later on in the video. So for now, I'm going to set this to no, but later on we'll come back and set it to yes and see what that does. I'll choose next for now because I want to go through the out-of-box experience. This is what happens when you first turn on the computer without an operating system on it. Well, Windows is already installed, but the user gets this brand new, fresh, out-of-the-box experience. And so we have the option of deploy mode. By default, it's set to user-driven. There is an option to set it to self-deploying. This is very important because the default is user-driven. The normal way of using Windows Autopilot is user-driven. And by that I mean there'll be a user clicking through next, finish, typing in their username and password at some point. The alternative, self-deploying, you see grays out a lot of these these options because it's very strict as to how this device can be built. It's going to self-deploy. There's not going to be anybody typing a username and password to get in. There's going to be no choices, and it's going to be used for something like a kiosk or a display system or some kind of terminal which isn't going to be used by an end user. Now, obviously, if you're building one of those, this is a great method to use, but that's not the demonstration I'm giving today. I'm going to go with user-driven, so we have all of these options that we're going to go through. Now we have the option of join to Microsoft Entra ID as, and then this default, and the correct answer is Microsoft Entra joined. The alternative is Microsoft Entra hybrid joined. This isn't kind of a choice that you just make based on how you feel at the time. This is a conscious decision that you need to make. And the default is Microsoft Entra joined, because we don't want to do hybrid joined unless we absolutely need to. And I will challenge you and say you don't need to do hybrid joined. You almost certainly do not need to do hybrid joined. And if you do need hybrid joined devices, don't do Autopilot. Just build the devices some other way. Autopilot is not easy when it comes to hybrid joined devices, so just don't do it. It involves a lot more complexity and prerequisites and requirements and security than you can ever imagine. It's just easier to do Entra joined and fix the problems that you were experiencing with Entra joined devices if you were. So I'm going to go with Entra joined, and let's talk about it in the comments. If you do feel you need hybrid joined, let's go into that in more detail. Next, Microsoft license terms. Do we want to show those to the user or not? Most of the time, I don't need or expect my users to read through the license terms, so I can just hide them on the basis that I'm accepting those license terms for my user. And the same with the privacy settings. This is a company laptop or a company device. I don't need the user to make decisions about the privacy of the device that we're using. So I'm going to select hide here as well. Next, we have an option to hide change account options. Now that refers specifically to whether the user can change from logging in with Entra ID or a local account or even a personal Microsoft account. In this case, if you're using Windows 11 or Windows 10, 18 or 9 and later, and you have configured the company branding in Entra ID, then you can select hide and it won't allow the user to choose to sign in with a different account. That's probably a good idea, so we can go back and check how we configure company branding in a little while. We also have the user account type. Now, are there any requirements on this? It doesn't look like there are. So we have the option of allowing the user to sign in and become an administrator or become a standard user. Now, it's always a good idea to try and have your standard users as standard users in the environment, because if every user you have is an administrator, then you're going to have a very messy environment where it's quite risky that the user will be able to respond to malware and install stuff that they shouldn't be installing. So it's always a good idea to take this opportunity to set it to standard so that users aren't administrators on their own devices. Now, as you can see, it does say that users who are global administrator will always be admin accounts on all devices, so we don't need to worry about locking ourselves out. But standard users should be standard on devices. Next, we have this choice of allow pre-provisioned deployment. Now, pre-provisioned deployment is very useful because with pre-provisioned deployment, we can build a device almost in full before we give it to the end user, so that we can install things like Office and all of the applications and configurations that we're targeting at the device can be installed even before the user gets their hands on the device, even before they get it delivered to their house or to their desk. And this is very useful because it means that the time it takes for a user to complete their bit where they log in is significantly reduced. This used to be called white glove autopilot because it was giving the scenario of someone, you would give them an extra bit of treatment, an extra special experience, and that white glove experience. But now it's called pre-provisioned because really we are pre-provisioning that device for the company, and then the user gets to log in and it gets provisioned exactly for them based on their username. So at the moment it's set to no, and actually that's the default, and it should be set to no unless you do intend to use pre-provisioned deployment, because if you set it to yes, there are some additional things that need to happen in the back end on the computer which make it slightly more complicated. So if you're not planning to use pre-provisioned, just set no. If you are going to use it, set this to yes. Another interesting quirk is that if you set this to yes, it is not possible to build a machine via a virtual machine, so you can't do any testing with it, and so actually you need to select no if you're going to be building virtual machines. Next, we have the language or region. It says operating system default. Now this is the default for the operating system that is installed on the computer. If you're happy with the operating system that's installed on the computer, then we can simply leave it as operating system default, or we can allow the user to select it, or we can go through any of these options and select the correct language for this profile. Next, we can automatically configure the keyboard based on the region that we've got set above. And finally, we can apply a device name template. Now, if I select yes, you can see that we actually get to use variables. So for example, we have this is grayed out, which means I can type over it, but I would type something like first coffee, and then that's used 11 characters already, which is quite a lot. And I only have 15 available in the name itself. So then I would need to do something like dash, which is now 12, and I've only got 3 available. So it would be %rand 3%. And that is now 15 characters because we have the 11 here. We have this is the 12th, and this is a random 3 characters. That's not ideal, really. So you probably, because you could only then build 999 devices before they start being reused. And in fact, it doesn't always check to see whether the device already exists. So the chance of having duplicate devices is really quite high. Now, it's only duplicate in name, not in the unique device identifier, so it's not going to be a technical problem, but it means that you will have some devices that have the same name, which is not going to be a easy to understand experience for your support staff. So always try and have something like a short prefix and then maybe a longer set of random characters, like this, for example, 6, and that doesn't mean that you'll never have a duplicate name because it is completely random, so it will of course duplicate at some point, but it means that there's less chance of them being duplicated when you have a large number of devices. Okay, so we have the profile now. The only other thing we need to do is assign these profiles. Now in almost all of the videos about using Autopilot, they'll tell you to create a dynamic device group that lets you target devices that are in the Autopilot devices list. Let's look at that. I'm going to go to learn.microsoft.com, and from here, I'll accept those. I'm going to get the Autopilot device. This keyboard isn't great. The Autopilot device group, and you will use this one and try and find the device group. There it is. Create device groups for Windows Autopilot. You can see it says that we need to create a new group in the Intune admin center. So let's go and do that. Groups. Ooh, I'm going to just open this in a new tab so I don't ruin the profile I'm already creating. So I'm going to go to groups, new group, and it says to call it, enter a name. So I'm going to call it AP demo group. Right, and then I'm going to scroll down and it says we need to add this expression, which is device physical IDs start with a ZTD ID. So let's do dynamic device, dynamic query, and here we're going to edit this rule syntax and we're going to do device physical IDs any starts with a ZTD ID. You will sometimes see other videos, not naming any names, using contains. That is deprecated, it's not supported anymore. That is not how you do it. You just use starts with, and that's mainly because the processing power needed for Microsoft to check the entire string of the device physical IDs for this string, which is what happened when you use contains, it costs much more processing power for Microsoft to do that rather than just looking for the start, and it is always starting with that. So we'll choose OK. Now when I create that, then we have a group which is called APDP group, which will contain only devices that are synchronized to the Autopilot devices list. Let me create that. And so from my profile, I can simply choose add groups, and I can type my AP demo group. There it is there. Now that will contain the computers that are in my Autopilot devices list. But surely I can just choose all devices instead, because I want all of my devices to be part of Windows Autopilot. So I simply choose all devices and choose next and create. So now we've got the profile. How does this work in real life? Well, in real life, you'll be buying machines from a vendor that will put the devices in your Autopilot devices list, either by sending you the hashes in a CSV or by adding them to your partner center, well, to your list via their partner center. If they aren't doing either of those, they're pretty much cheating you. That's the minimum they can do to get their cut out of a hardware drop. If you're not buying machines, then you might already have them as hybrid devices or cloud-only devices in Intune already. And if you do, well, you don't need to collect the hashes then either, because Intune already has them, and Intune can just get them for you with one click. So, scenario 1, buying devices. Well, they give you a CSV and you upload it just like this. Import and select from my downloads the AP CSV, choose open. The devices will appear in the Autopilot devices list, and then that's it done. Scenario 2, you have devices in the organization connected to Entra ID and in Intune. For these, we can just choose the Convert All Target Devices to Autopilot checkbox. Right at the start of this profile that I was creating, if we go back, you can see it says Convert All Target Devices to Autopilot. What does this actually do? Well, as you can see, it's really quite simple. It says Convert All Target Devices to Autopilot. If this profile is assigned to a computer that already exists in Entra or Intune, then it will convert it to Autopilot. By that I mean it will put it in the Autopilot devices list for you. Which means you won't need to collect the hardware hash from the computer. All you simply need to do is choose Convert All Target Devices to Autopilot and make sure that you're assigning it to a group of devices that contain the devices you want to be able to use Autopilot. No hash collection needed. So we now have the group. And the group might be useful for you, but really I want all my devices to be in Autopilot anyway, so why would I scope it down to a group that contains everything? Surely I can just skip that bit and assign it to all devices. Okay, I think we're done. And now that we've talked through Windows Autopilot, I can talk about Autopilot device preparation. I'll probably put that video somewhere on the screen, probably over my shoulder when it's done. See you next time.